Everyone loves a good joke, whether it's a knock knock joke or mama jokes or dad jokes, and those are two very different things. Maybe you like lawyer jokes. But one of the best kinds of jokes is a good inside joke. The joke that is significant or meaningful to you and one other person or you and just a handful of people. My brother and I worked together every day for 15 years. And over that time, we developed a number of inside jokes that we still reference to this day, 15 years after we last worked together. A few years ago, a seemingly unlikely friendship began, a friendship between political rivals with pretty great philosophical differences. It's the affection between former President George W. Bush and former First Lady Michelle Obama. Apparently, their relationship has been better than cordial all along. Both have acknowledged that they have a lot in common. But in 2018, at the funeral of John McCain, George handed Michelle a piece of candy. Later, she described it as an old cough drop, and he confirmed it, saying, "Yeah, I've had it for a few years. I have a bunch of them." 3 months later, at his own father's funeral, George did it again. He greeted the Trumps, the Clintons, the Carters, and the Obamas, but he made sure Michelle got her piece of candy. There is very little that brings people together, that breaks down walls, that calms tensions, or that eases awkward conflict any better than a well-timed, gentle, and tasteful joke. Did you know that Jesus sometimes used humor in his teaching? And we don't always read it that way. We don't get it because the traditional Hebrew joke was not a narrative with a punchline. It was much more subtle and involved the use of irony. There's a story, it's one of my favorite in the Gospels, in Matthew chapter 15, beginning in verse 21. It says, "Then Jesus left Galilee and went north to the region of Tyre and Sidon. A Gentile woman who lived there came to him pleading, 'Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David, for my daughter is possessed by a demon that torments her severely.' But Jesus gave her no reply, not even a word. Then his disciples urged him to send her away. 'Tell her to go away,' they said. 'She is bothering us with all her begging.' Then Jesus said to the woman, 'I was sent only to help God's lost sheep, the people of Israel.' But she came and worshiped him, pleading again, 'Lord, help me.' Jesus responded, 'It isn't right to take food from the children and throw it to the dogs.' She replied, 'That's true, Lord, but even dogs are allowed to eat the scraps that fall from their master's table.' 'Dear woman,' Jesus said to her, 'your faith is great. Your request is granted.' And her daughter was instantly healed." Did you get it? No? Well, allow me to explain. In verse 26, after the disciples try to brush the woman off as a nuisance, Jesus says something somewhat cryptic. He says, "It isn't right to take food from the children and throw it to the dogs." Now, there are only two possibilities with him making that statement. Number one, Jesus said something to the woman that was mean-spirited, sexist, racist, and cruel. Or, option number two, he was being ironic to make a point. And I have to tell you, I'm just not buying option number one. That Jesus, the friend of sinners, who broke social, political, and religious customs, and who dined with tax collectors and harlots, who welcomed into his company traitors and zealots, people on both sides of the political spectrum, who touched the untouchable, who loved the unlovable, that he looked at this broken, grieving woman and called her a dog with a straight face. I just don't buy it. Some scholars believe he said this to her with a wink and a smile. He was saying to her, "I feel your anguish for your daughter. I understand your shame over being a cultural outcast and your burden for being a woman in a culture that does not value women. And I want you to know that you have value. I want you to know that you are loved. I want you to know you are not a dog. Irony. And the reason I think he said it with a wink and a smile is that she got the joke. Not only that, she had a comeback. She said, even dogs deserve scraps. And maybe Jesus chuckled a little when he responded, dear woman, your faith is great and your request is granted. Whether that's what's happening here or not, this much is indisputable. A broken-hearted mother meets a kind-hearted Messiah. And unlike what often happens in our thinking, with Jesus, no one is less because of their differences. No one is a dog. No one is a dog because they have a different nationality. No one is a dog because they have a different religion. No one is a dog because they have different politics. No one is a dog because they are a woman or a Gentile or a Republican or a Democrat or a foreigner or an immigrant or an alien. Jesus is saying to this woman, faith is empowering and faith will be rewarded. It does not matter where you come from or what your circumstances are. By faith, you can rise above anything. Right now, some of you need empowering faith. Maybe you're worn down by our current situation, the pandemic that has changed so much for all of us. And there's so much conflicting information out there, so many different opinions from so many experts. It's hard to sort it all out. Everyone is confused. Everyone is trying to get a handle on this. Be like Jesus and have grace for others when you disagree about that. There's so much finger pointing, so many people trying to assign blame on the government or political parties, blame on the media, on China, on our medical systems. Be like Jesus and acknowledge none of those are dogs. We're all in this together. So even in the midst of tragedy and suffering, approach all these things with compassion and kind-heartedness and maybe even a little humor. I don't know if anyone in this picture is a hero to you, and I don't know if anyone in this picture is a villain to you. It doesn't matter. But I do know this. Michelle Obama recently came to the defense of this friend of hers and another acquaintance of them both, Ellen DeGeneres, when Ellen was castigated and widely criticized for sitting with George Bush at a sporting event where they chatted and laughed together. They say politics makes strange bedfellows, but the strangest bedfellows are made by mutual respect, compassion, gentleness, grace in spite of differences, and love. In spite of what he said, Jesus did not think that that Canaanite woman was a dog. Jesus made a joke, and it's one that we can all learn from.